What's up, everybody? We are here at All Things UTV, the full throttle power sports shop, and we are going to do a install video on the Pro XP tender springs. This is the Dynamix suspension, which is, pretty much with installs the same as the Walker Evans. We've got our tender spring kit here. This is our All Things UTV RZR tender spring kit. I'm here with my man Seth. He's our technician for today, and he is going to go over a few things on the tender spring install on the Pro XP. So bear with us as we get started. All right, so we're starting with the rear. What do we got, Seth?
Basically, got to have a hammer, big flathead, an 18mm socket, 18mm wrench, impact if you got one. If not, ratchet works well too. And we're going to start by coming over. Obviously, impact, lug nuts, take your wheel off. Come up and loosen the spanner wrench. Before you start loosening the spanner wrench, you want to spray your shock body down with cleaner and lube so your spanner nuts will back off easily. Once you get these backed off, you can unbolt the bottom of the shock once your wheel's off, and we'll start spinning the spring up, loosening it up, and change out a tender spring.
Yeah, and the reason why he says we want to spend a little bit of time making sure this is clean and lubricated is because sometimes this is aluminum shock body, and it's a steel spanner nut, and that can damage the shock body and it can seize up on some of the units. So definitely want to spend some extra time cleaning and lubricating that particular portion of the shock.
Hose it down with some good brake parts cleaner. Hit it with some lubricant. Get shock bolt out.
And this one has the live valve, so we will definitely want to take our time and disconnect the live valve plug, because you can screw that up and it is expensive. So if you have live valve, take your time and unplug the live valve plug. Now you can actually spin the springs off by hand.
On the rear it works well.
On the rear it works really well.
Front, sometimes not that easy.
And just like that, we have got the rear already installed. How long do you think it took on the rear?
15 minutes.
15 minutes to install the rear tender spring on a Pro XP. Most models, the rear is the easiest because you got so much room here. There's so much threads and not a lot of preload. So where did you set your preload per instructions?
I set it at 1 inch down. I brought the top spanner ring down and put just a little bit of pressure on the spring to hold it in place. Got my measurement from the top of the shock body to the top of this spanner, not this one. And I brought it down 1 inch from where it was sitting after I put the initial just a little bit of pressure. So
basically what we're doing is, when we say the first setting is very, very generic, because as you can see, this machine is loaded to the gills. I mean, it's got a spare tire way up high, which, I mean, the engineering of the suspension on this unit, it's got tree kickers, it's got windshield, it's got mirrors, it's got full sound system by Rockford, big heavy tires with weird offset, it's got a winch bumper and things like that. As you can see, this unit is heavily accessorized. Okay, that being said, the reason why we ask you to do 1 inch, that 1 inch is after you get this installed, this spanner nut bumps the top of the tender spring, okay, and then you go down 1 more inch. That gives you pressure on this to hold the car up off of the ground. Even though that is 1 inch, that 1 inch, once you get it on there and do your final according to the instructions and your tire size, that 1 inch may have to go up to lower the car or down to raise the car, depending on where you are after we get the car on the ground and then we roll the car back and forth to break the tires loose, okay? So like I said, bump your top spanner nut to your spring loose, and then you run it down 1 more inch. That is the generic setting for all units, and then you fine tune it. Yes, you actually have to fine tune it. We do not have the cheat code to set this while it's on the lift, okay? So it does actually take a little bit of effort. It is the easiest kit to install, DIY kit with the best results on the market, but there is a little bit of effort that you've got to do, okay? So here we are on the front. So what are we going to do here first?
Get all your sockets and all your tools together. You got to take this shock off. Cannot do it on the car as you could the rears. So you have to take this one off. It is a little tricky to get to the top ones up here because they're all, your top bolts are way up in here and they're hard to get to. So have to change your tools up a little bit. Get you a couple wrenches, long reach ratchet, unplug your live wire, because once again you do not want to tear that off. It gets very expensive.
So what he's saying is you got to dig deep.
In the
You got to dig deep off into the toolbox to be able to get deep off in the razor, okay? So you may have to come up with some longer tools, shorter tools, make some tools, whatever. But yeah, it's doable. Almost 95% of our customers that we sell our kits to, they do it themselves, which is pretty awesome.
Again, you're all the way down on your spanner. You don't have to adjust these any touch like you do the rears because they're a longer spring. So you start from where you're at, run the spring 1 inch up, add 1 inch of preload, put them on the machine, and do your final testing from there to get your final ride height.
We have finished the front, and we have got the 1 inch of preload here. Got the shock plug. So what kind of time do you have invested so far?
I am about an hour deep in it.
Hour deep. Now, we are to the point of it coming off of our lift or your jack stand, or however you choose to lift the unit up off the ground. Now, as you can see, how tall this machine is. Tires are all jacked up. Same thing in the front. Tires are all jacked up. And the reason why this machine has not been relaxed since we let it down. A lot of people make the mistake of going straight and measuring before the machine is what I'm calling relaxed. What happens is when you lower the machine down, the suspension comes down, and these tires, they lock to the surface because of the weight of the machine. So, whenever we get, right now, we're going to jump in the machine, and we are going to relax the machine or break it loose from the concrete, settle the suspension, thingy-majig, doody-mahoo, whatever. You see how that works? That is the Dynamix reacting to the key. Moving it back and forth a little bit. All right, sliding the brake. We're braking to measure the ground clearance on the front and the rear. And it looks to me like we need to come up to our specifications on our instructions. So if you need to come up with the ride height, you lower this down, okay? We've got a generic formula. In the rear, a 1/2 inch lower is 1 inch of ride height higher on the skid plate. That means spanner nut, lowering the spanner nut, going down with it, lifts the machine. A 1/2 inch lower spanner nut equals 1 inch more ground clearance, okay? Now on the front, same thing. Looks like we need to come up, okay? Our generic preload setting of 1 inch is where we set it, and now we will come in here in the front and we will drop the spanner nut down to lift the machine, okay? On the front, generic ratio is 1 inch down on preload, it's 1 inch up on the front of the machine, okay? So 1 inch lower preload on the front raises the machine 1 inch, okay? So it's 1 to 1, and then on the back, it is 1/2 to 1, okay? So we're gonna finish dialing this in. This could take as much as another hour,